Crunch talks in Italy, but hosted by the Gulf state of Oman. Here, the delegation's arriving at its diplomatic compound in the north of the city. The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who had an earlier meeting with his Italian counterpart, went into these talks with serious misgivings about the US position. Were they demanding that Iran permanently dismantle its entire nuclear program? That would have been a deal breaker for the Iranian side, possibly collapsing the whole process. And yet, after 4 hours of negotiations that took place here, it was revealed that the pace of this process is now going to be increased. There'll be technical talks in Oman next Wednesday, and that's where Mr. Araghchi and the US chief negotiator Steve Witkoff will meet again in 1 week's time. By the end of the day, speaking to state TV, the Iranian foreign minister was sounding more positive.
The negotiations were held in a constructive atmosphere, and I can say that they are moving forward. We are moving forward. We must be very cautious, but there is no reason for much pessimism either. We must walk a middle path, reasonable and calm.
As the delegations left, it was clear there's not yet been any breakthrough. There will be tough negotiations ahead. But the Omani Foreign Ministry, who are supervising the process, issued a statement saying even the unlikely now is possible. James Bays, Al Jazeera, Rome.
Well, Tohid Asadi joins us live from Tehran. So can the outcome of the talks in Rome be described as progress, or are they being described as being constructive and successful? I mean, what are Iranians saying about it?
Well, the entirety of the Iranian society shares a pragmatic mixture of different sentiments and feelings here in Tehran. If I speak to people, if I just take a look at the newspapers and the social media, we see this clear signs of hope in this regard. People are hoping that with sanctions being lifted, if negotiations go very well, there is a possibility of facilitated economic life. And also there is this clear air of mistrust with respect to the historical background that is out there when it comes to the JCPOA experience. And also there is this concern when we speak to people about the shadow of war, specifically after the military threats that have been directed by the United States and President Trump in particular over the past months. And so we see this mixture of different sentiments here and there. And if we just take a look at the newspapers here, you will see the repetition of the same pattern. We see Tehran Times coming up with the headline, the story goes on, and we know that there is going to be a next round of talks down the road. If you go to the left side of the spectrum, you will see Etemad and Sharq Daily. They come with rather positive, let's say, perspective, speaking of the entire trajectory of talks. Also, we've got this, let's say, different other spectrums of Iranian media, speaking of which we can refer to the same scope of hope and optimism. And at the same time, Iranians are saying that they are not trying to be too optimist, not too pessimist. The reality on the ground is there, but we have to wait to see what takes place on the next round of talks.
All right, but significant enough for the story to be on the front pages of the newspaper there in Iran. We know that round 3 will mean that the talks go back to Oman. Before that, we understand there will be a meeting of technical experts. Any more details on what that means?
Well, we just took a look at the different statements, specifically the one that came out from the Iranian spokesperson Ismail Baghai after the talks. I think the two sides, both the American one and the Iranian, are not really interested into getting into further details when it comes to media. The talks, the previous round of talks that was yesterday, happened behind the closed doors, and we didn't see much of these details, except for one statement that described the talks positive and constructive. We know that on Wednesday there is going to be a technical conversation at expert level. We know that IAEA has expressed sort of interest to get further engaged in the trajectory of talks. And also on Saturday there's going to be a next round of talks based upon the expert opinion that will be coming out from Wednesday conversations. But still, I think that there are so many controversies, specifically as talks move towards the technicalities, and we might wait to see what takes place on the ground in Oman.
All right, Tohid, many thanks for that. Tohid Asadi there in Tehran. Well, Mohammad Eslami is a research fellow at Tehran University. He joins us also from the Iranian capital. Welcome to Al Jazeera. So the Trump administration has given these talks 2 months. We're on 2 rounds of talks so far, a third one planned for Oman. The second one, though, was quite short. No sign of an expected agenda for the next round. Has anything actually been accomplished yet?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. I should say that among the so many possible scenarios for both sides to think about the obstacles between Iran and US and the nuclear issues, the only rational scenario to think about is the diplomatic way to solve the problem. And both sides know about the circumstances in the region and what happened during the experience of what happened during the JCPOA negotiations and something like this. So at this phase, it was very important for both sides to compromise on the framework of the agreement. What is the framework of the agreement? The framework of the agreement is a series of a number of topics that they want to talk about, because you know that there are so many disagreements regarding the topics that they can talk about them. From the Iranian point of view, the talks was only talking about the nuclear issues, but from the Trump administration, the last experience of achieving and compromising on JCPOA was not good for the Americans, because they didn't talk about the benefits of the American companies, and also they didn't talk about the defense capabilities of Iran, specifically the ballistic capabilities of Islamic Republic of Iran. So if they can come to a compromise on the framework, it means that they are agree on what to talk about during the next round of negotiations.
Okay,
it is interesting for me that...
Let me get this straight. So they need to come up with a framework upon which they can build an agenda for the next phase of the talks. But we do know that technical experts will be meeting ahead of this next round, talks returning, of course, to Oman. What are these technical experts going to be focusing on specifically, do we understand?
It is very interesting for me as well that at the phase of talking about the framework, they need some talks between the technical experts. It means that maybe they want to talk about the details of the Iranian nuclear capabilities, because it is important that the situation right now regarding the Iran nuclear capabilities is really different. At the same time, there are also so many disputes regarding the primary sanctions. I should mention that in the last round of, at the time of JCPOA, they didn't compromise on primary sanctions. So primary sanctions is very important, because when it comes to primary sanctions, it is under the control of the US president himself. So there are so many different technical ways regarding the primary sanctions and secondary sanctions.
Let me ask you about some specifics around Iran's nuclear program. Is Iran clear about what it's being asked to do when it comes to its nuclear ambitions? Because Steve Witkoff, the US negotiator, suggested Iran could stick to 3.67% uranium enrichment. That comment was made in an interview with Fox News. They've now backed away from that, suggesting Iran doesn't have any enrichment rights. So what is it in your eyes?
I think that Trump administration is under a real pressure from their allies in Congress, and also their regional allies, specifically from the Israel government. So the Israel government wants Trump administration to push Iran to dismantle the nuclear capabilities all at once, but it is not a realistic scenario. So according to what Iranian Foreign Minister said, the topics that Americans are discussing inside the negotiations is different with they are talking with the media. So I think that the Trump administration, the President Trump himself, that didn't say anything regarding dismantling the US, the Iranian nuclear capabilities. He said that the Iranians should not have nuclear weapon.
Okay,
and this is exactly
let me be
claim
clear.
That the Iranian government is saying.
So let me be clear. You're saying that the United States is under a lot of pressure from Israel for Iran to completely dismantle all nuclear capabilities, but the Americans are being constructively ambiguous going into talks about what they demand. But I note, however, going back to this figure of 3.67% enrichment, that is exactly the same enrichment cap offered by Barack Obama under the 2015 deal, the deal, of course, that Donald Trump ripped up. So might Iran want something else this time, if it's just going to repeat elements of the old deal, but with the Trump stamp on it?
You know, while the Iranian capabilities regarding the nuclear issues is tremendously different with the time of Barack Obama, the Iranian point of view is okay with the limitations under the JCPOA and the deal Barack Obama achieved in the last U.S. administration, not the last, before the Biden administration. Anyway, and the problem that President Trump had with the last deal was not about the level of the enrichment. It was about the benefits that the American economy would have achieved out of the deal. And you know that in the last round of negotiations, they didn't talk about the primary sanctions. They didn't talk about any deal between Iranian companies and the American companies. You know that Mr. Araghchi, Iranian foreign minister, wrote an essay in Washington Post and talked about billions of dollars opportunities regarding U.S.-Iran economic relations. So this is, I think, for the Trump administration, this is much more important than the level of the enrichment.
All right. So Trump felt like the need to justify ripping up the old deal because basically the Americans didn't get enough out of it economically, financially, politically. Mohammad Eslami, research fellow at Tehran University, many thanks for that.
Thank you so much, Isabel.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.